Dobrý den, dámy a pánové.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Vítám vás v dnešní odpolední části.
Welcome to our afternoon session, which will be dedicated to centralization and central purchasing and strategic procurement. We will hear 4 presentations on this topic, and then we will have a discussion. If you want to ask any questions, please leave it after the whole session. So, centralization can be very efficient tools for acquiring high-quality services and works. How to set the system, what are the risks, and what are the benefits? We will hear the answers to these questions by 4 experts. Now I'd like to ask the following experts to the stage. Mr. Weiner, Mr. Peter Norstedt, Jana Dubcová, and Mr. Verzalík. We would like to start with the presentations. The first will be the presentation by Mr. Weiner. I'd like to introduce Mr. Weiner in the Czech language. Mr. Gerhard Weiner is the head of the Center for Action Plan on Sustainable Procurement in Austria. Since 2019, he's in charge of the NABE platform, which is a service point of the Sustainable Action Plan under the Ministry of the Environment in Austria, and they focus on environmental and social criteria and their application in public procurement. The floor is yours.
So, Anna, thank you for the introduction and the invitation. Thank you that I can be here and bring you some insights about the Austrian sustainability procurement system. I want to show you in some slides how we built up in the last years a governance system. What should us bring further into the action, because we seen in the last years that we are very good in building theoretical and strategical papers and thoughts, but we have to come further into the action, into the practice. And you see it here. This is our mission. This is our ambitions. The public sector shows the way. You find these words also in the in the government program of the Austrian federal government, and we see also a distinct chapter in this government program concerning public procurement, concerning sustainable public procurement and innovation public procurement. And we see also that the NABE action plan, NABE stands in German for Nachhaltige Beschaffung, this is GPP and SRBP. We see here a strong chapter to develop this system. And this system I want to show you in the next minutes. I try to step further into my slices. Yes, I already mentioned it. It's about governance and culture. And in the NABE action plan, maybe only some word about this system. We see 16 NABE criteria groups, from construction to ICT to textiles and food. And in these criteria groups, the federal departments are mandatory to fulfill these criteria. But how we can bring these ideas and these criteria to the practical field, that's such a topic, and I want to show you how we will do that now. It's all about the government program and the NABE declaration. With this we will start, and I will show you the framework in it that helps us to bring it down to earth, to bring it down into the tenders and realize sustainable products and services. And I will show you only today the governance system of the federal level. The time is too short to give you a whole overview about the full system. Maybe you know that we have also in Austria very powerful, the so-called Bundesländer, the federal states, and we have 2,100 municipalities who are also very important to us and which are also very important stakeholders to us, but that are not the topic for today. The topic for today are the federal ministries, and the federal ministries are obliged to the NABE Action Plan, and this is history. We have this NABE Action Plan since 2010, and since then we have this NABE binding via internal instructions in all ministries on the federal level in Austria. We see one primus inter pares in this action plan. It is the Ministry of Climate Action, therefore it was the Ministry of Environment, and this ministry is steering and has installed the NABE Chief Coordinator. He's an official who works in the BMK, the Ministry of Climate Action, and has the task to coordinate all the actions and tasks in this framework. And we need support, of course, we need scientific support. We have two agencies who help us to design NABE criteria. On the one hand, we have the Environmental Agency, and on the other hand, we have a research institute who prepare and designs the NABE criteria. And it's also important to understand that we have a group of ministries and they have all the objectives, that's clear. Yeah? We have the objectives of the environment and climate action gathered in the BMK, the Ministry of Climate Action, but also really important is to bring all together. That's about what I want to say to you about the culture. Yeah, you can't do that alone. And if we look back in the years, at the starting point, 2010, the Ministry of Environment was a little bit alone in his tasks. And we got our challenges, and it all needs too long. It needs too much time, because if you see, we started 2010 with the version 1 of the NABE criteria catalog, and the version 2 was established in 2021, 11 years. That's a long distance. It's too long. There was something needed to be involved. That was clear, and it was also really important to engage more the Federal Ministry of Finance to bring it into the system. And there, now I come to some centralization aspects. We have here some very important companies in our system. On the one side, the PPG. This is the Public Procurement Agency. And on the other hand, we have the BIC. This is the real estate company in Austria, both centralized and supervised, not only, but really important, supervised by the Federal Ministry of Finance. This is only a model. Details I'm sparing out. This is all but really important to understand. We have on the one hand the PPG, a centralized purchasing body with a portfolio of 30 procurement groups. I already mentioned the 16 procurement groups of the NABE Action Plan. So you see we have not a full match. We are not satisfied. We have to go also further with new NABE criteria groups. But we have 16 criteria groups, and 14 of them are building up in the PPG. And this is also important. The PPG is also mandatory to fulfill all these criteria in their tenders. How is this solved? This is solved by a direct owner instruction to the PPG from the Ministry of Finance, because the Ministry of Finance holds 100% ownership of the PPG. It's a little bit more complicated if you look at the BIC. The BIC is under a holding, under umbrella if you want, and there is not such the same method possible to have an influence into companies like that. It's a stake company. It's it's too much. It's too complicated to explain that now. The differences about the steering possibilities, but also we have the possibility to come into the big. I mentioned it that we have also construction criteria. And yes, the real estate company, what is it doing? They make construction tenders, but the owners of the tenders or the public authorities of the tenders are the federal ministries, and the federal ministries are binded to the NABE action plan, so they give the order to fulfill the NABE criteria in the big tenders too. Yeah, what we see in these years, what I show you here was the last decade. And in 29, the public authorities, especially the Ministry of Climate Action, detected, okay, only with the NABE chief coordinator, it's difficult to reach all the goals, all the objectives. We need a service center to build up the service measures you need from the website or workshops, events, and so on. And yeah, so the NABE platform was born. It was in 2019, so it's not so long ago that we started with the NABE platform. I'm the head of this NABE platform that is the service center of the sustainable public procurement here in Austria. Yeah, and yeah, you can. This is also now important information. How are we financed? We are financed from the Ministry of Climate Action over the NABE chief coordinator. So we are in a very intense exchange with the NABE chief coordinator, and we get our projects and our tasks from the NABE chief coordinator. And yeah, where we are hosted, we are not a company by ourselves. We are hosted in the BPG. I'm also a department head in the BPG, the Public Procurement Agency. That helps a lot. Why? Because in the BPG, 3 billion euros get transformed into tenders and products for our federal ministries, but not only for the federal ministries, but also for the federal states and the municipalities. Our BPG contracts open. Maybe also another very important information, the BPG is a public limited enterprise by law, and the federal ministries are obliged to buy in the BPG. So maybe now you can understand how powerful it is if we are inside the system and can work together with our colleagues in the procurement department to build up tenders together and to have the most impossible sustainable impact as we can. But the story continues. We are a platform, we want to grow. And there are other ministries who are very interested to grow in the field of sustainable public procurement. There is the Ministry of Agriculture. So you can imagine that they have objectives in the public food sector, and they financed the Forum Austria Eats Sustainable. And this project starts already in 2020. And is a ring, if we want, with a specialization with 2 experts, specialized experts for public procurement in the food sector. So you see, we are growing. We have not only now the power of the Minister of Climate Action, we have additional now and cooperation with and contract together with the Ministry of Agriculture, and we are now already in discussions with the Ministry of Social Affairs because, yeah, we have a lack in social criteria in the NABE action plan, but we need the mandate from the responsible ministry. That's our way. Yeah, and this is also new. We built, this is really fresh, and we built up in January this year the high-level steering group. The constitutional meeting was in January this year, and this is important, it's a high decision-making meeting. We sent out the presidential section heads. I think the better word here is deputy ministers. So it's a really high-ranked meeting level, and they have to build up the important the important decision we need to make, and I will give you some outlooks which first decisions they have already made. So, yeah, and this is also really important. This high-level steering group was accomplished with the representations by the CEOs, the managing directors of the big and the PPG. This is really helpful so that we gather the power in this decision-making process so that any important entity is involved. And that's about culture. Yeah, the NABE platform as well as the NABE chief coordinator, we are a secretary for them, we assist, that's easy to understand. And really important is that, yeah, we have the high level, but we want to come into the operational field. So we need the correct contact persons in the ministries, and that are the so-called NABE commissioners. They are, you see it here on the left wing, sent out, the federal ministries sent out procurement specialists. They are in the most cases, they are department heads of procurement, public procurement, if you want, in the ministries. So yes, we have also this operational level, and this is really important. On the one side, they get support from the PPG, and on the other side, we coaches them to fulfill the NABE criteria, because the NABE criteria are complex. You know also the EU criteria, they are good, but not so easy to understand and not so easy to get in practice. So we help them. They need help, and we know that, and they are only the gateway. We see them only as gateway into the ministries, because in the ministries a lot of people are in charge to procure in the different fields of ICT, of textiles, and so on. But we have now the correct, the distinct contact persons, and they help us to find very quick the correct contact persons for some special tenders. Yes, and of course we are also close with the scientific support. So we see us a little bit, okay, I confess I designed this governance sheet, but I see us in the middle. The NABE platform is a platform and want to try to bring all those entities together. I see this is it's a little bit our mission. And maybe only some words about the operational fields, what we are doing now. Okay, this is nice, this is a governance system, it's a little bit theoretical, but we go in action now. What we are doing now is, on the one hand, this is really important, reporting about the successes, about the steps. We have some objectives in the NABE action plan, in the different objectives in different fields, of food procurement, for example, as well as in ICT. And we have to check how is the status quo. Where we are standing and what have we to do. We enlarge the delta to the targets. And this is really important about monitoring and evaluation, and here helps a lot that we have the PPG with their data models, with the data systems, and so we can look very deep inside the procurement transactions of the ministries and have a good overlook about the situation and can offer new actions they are needed. About the know-how transfer, I don't want to spend any time because Laura Bauer, a colleague of mine, comes tomorrow to you and brings some insights about the NABE action plan as a service center, and she will also be give a little bit more insights about the NABE criteria. Sorry for that I don't get insight about this material now, but I think maybe this is for this audience now the more interesting stuff. 2 points I want to explain a little bit more. In how many minutes do I have still?
You can still have some time.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit more about the integration in the PPG core process in the next slide. And in one other slide, I want to talk about the working groups for NABE criteria. I talked about the tolerances. I talked about version 1 to version 2, you remember, 11 years. One critical thing, one obstacle was that we built this catalog, or we see this catalog as a whole. As a sum, to be as jointed, and so there was some hard discussions. For example, in the food procurement group, but with that, we didn't come further in this one group, but the whole criteria catalog was stopped through interventions in one group. So we decided to separate the groups from each other and develop them by their own further and give them into this workflow I will show you in the next slides. And this is also important. I talked about the frame. The stakeholders are really important. We have tons of stakeholders. The slide would explode if I want to show every stakeholder. It begins from the Chamber of Agriculture, the Chamber of Commerce, the suppliers. I already mentioned the municipalities, the federal state, and so on. But we see this now as one framework, and we have these channels, the structured channels. This is important. The structured channels to the stakeholders. Yeah, don't be arbitrary, but give them a clear discussion ways and bring them structured into our system. That's here the intention, and this is what I want to say with this frame. Yeah, here I'm now in the decision-making workflow. This is also really fresh because we got only 3 days ago the decision from all ministries to work to have this decision-making workflow, this process design, that we can follow these rules. This is our only reduced process images, but I want to show you in some process steps how we will work with new product groups. I have to say, if we look into the ICT product group, we don't gather all important subgroups. We have only ICT criteria, sustainable ICT criteria, for example, for devices, for notebooks. But we still don't have criteria for servers or storages. I know the GBB criteria at the EU level already deliver this information, and we say, okay, it's time for us now, especially with the look. If you look at the cloud systems, we need here criteria, and this will be our first criteria group we will start with. And we have now this process design. Yeah, do you remember the steering group? There are the deputy ministers inside this steering group, and this steering group made the decision to work along this process design. Yeah? We have the NABE institutions that make a proposal. In our case now, as first example, the ICT criteria for servers. The NABE chief coordinator makes this proposal. At the next step, this proposal comes to the steering group, and they have to decide, is this a topic which is urgent? Is there an impact to start with, only to start with? But you see, we ask all of them. And this, again, it's about culture. To have this transparency, to give every ministry the chance to give commentaries, to give input in an early phase of this criteria group development. And if we got this positive decision from the steering group, then the work only begins. Then we start with a working group. And you remember the NABE commissioners. The NABE commissioners will be sent also in this working group. But there's one exception: if they have not the competences. For example, if they're not ICT experts, they can send another ministry official to this working group. But the working group members are only from the ministries, or from the BIG if it's about construction, or from the BPG if it's about the other product groups. But yes, we have a very close, and you remember my stakeholder image, we have a very close stakeholder consumption system. We bring them into the working group, but don't let them be the working group. That's also really important. But because the stakeholders they have tons of good ideas, but we have to handle that. And we have to handle that in a structured way. Yeah, and if the working group make a final draft, and it comes to the NABE steering group, and the NABE steering group decides if this is working or not. If not, okay, then it goes back. Then starts the feedback loop. Then the draft has to be checked, and maybe some new ideas put in, and then it comes back to the steering group. And the steering group has to make a clear decision. Why? Why is this so important? Because the next step will go to the Ministry Council, and it only can work if we have here a common decision in an earlier step. It can only work if all presidential section heads, if all deputy ministers say yes to this operation, say yes to these criteria. If there are some thoughts, we have to discuss that, but it's not reasonable to bring it in a status. There are thoughts to bring it to the Ministry of Council that don't work. Yeah? And that's our way to the implementation, and we start now. We are still at the beginning with this design, but we have the decision, we have the fund, we have the fundament for that operation, and we will start soon with the first NABE criteria catalog. I mentioned the ICT server area. One last main slide I want to show you. It's about the integration in the BBG core process. It's also a very important task for us at the NABE platform to work very close with our colleagues in the BBG. They built up the tenders, and we are not alone. The NABE platform, you already know, but we have a sister department in the BBG who is responsible for innovation. It's the UEB, it's the Innovation-Driven Service Center, and they have also this core process plan we worked out together, and I show you some insights now. What was the objectives as we built this up? There was, of course, socio-political procurement goals we want to reach. There are, of course, innovative and sustainable solutions for our customers. This focus is clear. We always have to look at our customers and their needs. This is also really important. And of course, we have to look to the suppliers and their needs. Don't forget that. And with market discussions, with market research, we have to come close also to the suppliers. And the monitoring is such a thing. It's really difficult. I mentioned it, yes, we have the BBG databases, but that's not enough, because we see also that the ministries have their own tenders, and we don't have the whole picture. And it's a difficult thing about the monitoring. I think the European Commission also know that it's really difficult to find the correct data. But that's a huge project we have to tackle this in the next years in Austria and also in whole Europe. There are several processes. I go quickly through it. You can find it in the slides later if you want to read it. It's about stakeholder management. I already mentioned that is a really important thing to bring it into the core process of the BBG with some formats. Innovation Scouting is a very famous format of the Innovation-Driven Service Center. We have this exploration phase to build up tenders, which tenders are new, with which I mentioned the market exploration, with market partners we should talk with. We have the preparation of the tender. This is really important. Also, these market talks, you can see now where are we together with our colleagues in the core process go into these market talks. We have a little bit this advantage from the NABE platform to bring into the discussion maybe harder questions about sustainability. So what's going on? How far is the enterprise? And that makes it easier in the discussion often with the enterprises. And in the implementation of the tenders, yes, you know that there are tons of lecturers about the technical specification, about the award criteria. You can use labels and so on. That sounds, it's not easy, but it's still harder to implement the correct labels into the tenders. And there are a lot of discussions, and it's really difficult, especially if you have to convince the legal department. The contract management, this is my last spot here on this slide, and that's also really important. The BBG offers an e-shop. An e-shop is a marketplace for the ministries as well as the federal states and the municipalities, and we work very close into this e-shop. We see these products, and many of these products are NABE relevant. They are sustainable relevant. They have our criteria, and we can show the clients, we can show our customers in this e-shop system if this is a NABE labeled product or not. And we go one step further. There are also these labels in the countries, for example, the Blaue Engel, maybe you know, or the österreichische Umweltzeichen, very famous and established labels. We also can mark into the product rows, and it's really helpful because we have filters too, so the customers, the ministries can search focused for these products. Yeah, I'm now at the end of my presentation. I hope it was something for you at interesting level. We have much more information on our website. We have an English version too. If you want to need more information, please come to our website, newsletter, LinkedIn. It's clear that we have that too. So, and on the last slide, you only can see that I'm not alone. We are growing. So we got at January one person more for the Forum Österreich. It's regionally sustainable, and we are in good discussions with the Ministry of Social Affairs. So I'm looking into the future, and I'm stunning about the next steps. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Weiner, for your very interesting presentation about NABE platform from Austria. Nyní bych v krátkosti v českém jazyce představila pana Norstedta.
Now I would like to introduce Mr. Nordstedt. Mr. Nordstedt works in the area of sustainable and green public procurement for more than 15 years. He focuses especially on public procurement and contracting authorities. He is tasked to work with public procurement, especially with emphasis on environment. He is also a member of the advisory group EU-GPP. He has also worked in international groups, for example, advisory body for the United Nations for sustainable procurement and International Council focusing on sustainable procurement in Asia. So the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much. I used to be a member of the EU-GPP group, but it's a long time ago. And thank you for inviting me, and it's really good to be here again. Like Erika, I was here 3 years ago before the pandemic, and now I feel like a cow that had been released from a long winter in the shed. So it's really nice to be here again and to be able to tell you a bit about our central purchasing body and how we work on strategies and sustainability. So I will give you some information on our CPB and how we are organized, who owns us, how we are financed, and so on, and set up and staffed, and so on, but also how we work on strategies, and also about our sustainability work that we do. So, first of all, ADA is a company, actually. It's owned by the Swedish Association of Local Authorities and Regions, abbreviated SKR. And SKR is a member and employer organization where all Sweden's 290 municipalities and 21 regions are members. And good to know is also that Swedish municipalities and regions are responsible for providing a significant proportion of all public services in Sweden, and they have a considerable degree of autonomy and have independent powers of taxation as well. So we have a local tax, a regional tax, and a governmental tax as well. And ADA is an operating support for our members, SKS members, and we have 3 different business areas. The CPB is one of them. We have a consultancy company, and we have a other company working with a lot with digitalization and helping our customers with digital solutions for HR and training sessions and so on. So this is our organizational chart, except the boss on the top. We have different departments. We have a procurement department. We have a category management department. We have sustainability and follow-up, where I work, and then we have strategic relations, people working very closely with our customers, being out in the country, meeting our customers. And then we have customer support and also a regional CPB for Stockholm, so these 13 municipalities in the vicinity of Stockholm working together. We have two different teams in our CPB. We have the category teams and we have the procurement teams. And the category teams are active throughout the whole procurement process, before, under, and after procurement. So they are always there, and they are shared by the category manager. And they always have a legal advisor, and they have a procurement officer, and they have support functions like sustainability strategies, contract controllers, customer support, etc. And their goal is to develop the category and its framework agreements and DPS in the short and long term. And the procurement team is active during the procurement phase, so it's more like a project organization. It's shared by the procurement officer, and otherwise they have the same functions as the category teams. And their goals is to procure timely and create a customer-friendly framework agreement and or DPS. So ADA in numbers, we have approximately 1,200 customers. That is all of the municipalities, regions, and the companies. We have 150 framework agreements in dynamic purchasing systems, and they are voluntary to use. It's important to say it's not mandatory. So it's up to us to have a high quality otherwise the customers won't use our framework agreements. We have approximately 800 suppliers, which of 86% are SME companies. We have a turnover of 1.3 billion euros on our framework agreements and DPS. We are financed through, we take out 1.5% of the framework agreements turnover is charged as an administrative compensation from the suppliers. And we have 80 plus employees, and we produce about 30 to 40 framework agreements and DPS per year. The strategy, as we have been hearing earlier today, there is a lot of things going on, and we have to adjust to that. Of course, it influences us and also our customers, so we have to be always having on the radar what's happening out in the world. So it's a political perspective. We have to check the geopolitical instability has been really tough the last years. And that also means changes in our supply chains, and therefore we have to be very careful what's happening on the world, on the supply chain level. We have the social perspective, we have the economics and legal factors, we have a growing inflation right now. We have the IPI, Schrems, forced labor, Russia sanction, green deals, due diligences, a lot of things to take into consideration when procuring. And then we have the technological perspective where robotization, digitalization, energy crisis, machine learning, artificial intelligence, innovations that we have to have on our radar all the time. So it's very important. And in order to be this strategic purchasing management, we have to be, we want to influence the market and challenge the market. We want to drive change, and in order to do that, we need to think new. We need to challenge the market and the needs. We need to have a customer focus where we analyze and have a dialogue with the markets and our customers. We need an increased knowledge of the needs, therefore we need to meet our customers very often. We need cross-functional teams that closely cooperate with different stakeholders, and we have common goals, so we cooperate a lot. And we need a lot of facts and data in order to take better decisions. So we organized all our 150 framework agreements and DPS in a category tree that looks like this. We have 13 categories, all the way from IT products to street and park and vehicles and so on. And the benefits that we see is, first of all, filling the competence gap, because we have 290 municipalities, and the average municipality in Sweden has about 16,000 inhabitants, and maybe they have 2 procurement officers working on procurement. So they don't have either the resources nor the competence to do all this that we are doing, look at the market, trying to see what the market is moving and so on. We talk a lot about preparedness and supply strategies, and that is really hard for our small municipalities to meet. So therefore we see that we fill the competence gap with our framework agreements. We also make the complex simple, or at least we try to do. It's a big challenge to do that, because we have to hold our customers in the hand when they are doing the renewed competition and when they're using the contract. And that takes a lot of time for us, but it's very important for us to make the complex simple. We also see economies of scale for some standardized areas. Not everywhere, but especially for the standardized areas, we can see economies of scale. We provide supply strategy and preparedness, as I told you, and it has been really important now the last couple of 3 years here because of the pandemic and all the hospital care products that we have been trying to chase around the world. We provide a lot of sustainability. We have 6 full-time employed people working as sustainability strategists, setting criteria, analyzing criteria, following up criteria. And we provide contract management and also follow up on contracts. So I think these are the main benefits that we can see of our CPB, actually. So sustainability, what we do is we try to align to the Agenda 2030 and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and we always strive to set requirements for sustainability in all our procurement and dynamic purchasing system wherever we see it's relevant. So we have a risk perspective here. And what we have done is we have been analyzing the SDGs, and we found that we have about 16 different sustainability aspects that we are focusing on, and they very closely connect to the 17 SDGs. So if you put them together, you can see that we have social issues focused on the situation in Sweden, that is children's rights, labor conditions, work environment, employment promotion measures, and so on. We also have the international issues that span all 4 pillars of the UN Global Compact, that is sustainable supply chains, human rights, labor rights, environment in production countries, and anti-corruption. But we also have the sustainable investments that we see is connecting to the UN Global Compact. And then we have the classical environmental issues that take into account the life cycle perspective, that is circular economy, climate, natural resources, chemistry, and so on. And then we have the social issues focused on impacts on animals, and last but not least, the issues focused on impact on society, economic crime, and information security. So those 16 areas we have identified. And what we do in order to handle all these 16, we have a template developed for pre-procurement sustainability analysis. So before decisions on procurement, we have a checklist which includes all the 16 sustainability aspects and cover risks for people, environment and society. We do a preliminary study before procurement where we look at the land risk analysis in order to help us to determine where in our supply chains we see the greatest risks. And we have a Agenda 2030 analysis, which is more than 100 pages thick, so it's a really monster, but it helps us to analyze the risks. And we look into the OECD guidelines, and we have the UN guiding principles as well as steering documents. And out from this comes a spiderweb diagram where we pinpoint which of these 16 aspects we will focus on in the procurement. So if it's above 3 and above in this 0 to 5 scale, we say that it is relevant to have sustainability criteria within these areas. And these messy pictures try to show all the interests that trying to fight its way into the procurement documents. It's always from global goals. We have the sustainability strategies on a local level. We have goals on a national level. We have action plans, activities, priorities. We have climate neutral, fossil-free, ecological food. We have sustainable, non-toxic, socially responsible. Everything wants to squeeze into the procurement document, and that's the big work to actually get it into the procurement document in order to translate it over to requirements, award criteria, contract conditions in the procurement. And then, last but not least, we need to follow these up during the contract period. So just setting up a criteria in a procurement is just it's not even half the job to do that. So we need a lot of resources to do that, and we need competence to do that. And I guess that is the biggest shortcoming, I would say, in public procurement, that we don't have the resources nor the competence to do all this. So what we try to do is to, provide that to our customers. And this is our follow-up toolbox, just in order to show you what kind of activities we can do during the follow-up phase. We do a lot of follow-up with self-declarations to the suppliers. We have a lot of document reviews. We do a lot of office audits, not so much factory audits, but we do a lot of site visits as well when it comes to work and contracts works. And where do we spend our time? We spend about 50% of our time before procurement, where we do the analyzing. We spend as little time as possible under procurement, because if you do a good job before, you don't have to spend that much time under procurement. You don't have to go to court, hopefully. And then we spend a lot of time after, during the contract period, because that's very important. I would say a criteria that you're just using, not following up, is not happening. You have to go out there and follow up during the contract period. Then the suppliers understand this is for real, so they do it, but you have to be out there. So, some closing remarks. Category management is the shit, I would say. That provides need and market focus. It's give us high competence within each category. So this is a model that we will continue to foster. I think using Agenda 2030 is a very good ground for sustainable procurement to align everything to the 17 SDGs. Sustainable procurement requires resources and competence. Without that, it will just be some talk above our heads. And before procurement, analyze the risks and possibilities to promote sustainability and prioritize, because you can't run after all the balls. You have to prioritize somewhere. And during procurement, use the available tools. Use the EU GPP, eco-label, standards. If you have national tools, use them, because you don't have time to reinvent the wheel all the time. And last but not least, follow up. That is my final remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norstedt. Nyní se přesuneme do České republiky.
Now we shall hear the Czech speakers. The next topic will be introduced by an expert on central purchasing in Czech Republic, Jana Dubcová. I would like to introduce you briefly. She is the head of the Central Purchasing of Pilsen region in Czech Republic, active in central purchasing since 2010. The Central Purchasing of Pilsen region is an organization for central procurement. The main goal is to take into account the priorities of Pilsen region and efficiently use all the means available.
The floor is yours. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I will speak Czech. I hope you can hear me. I'm Jana Dubcová. I'm the head of Central Purchasing of Pilsen region since 2019. Central Procurement, Central Purchasing is an official independent organization since 2019 and saves time and money to Pilsen region. We have in the Pilsen region e-shop where we have commodities which you can which are being used frequently. We also have presentations, video guidelines to our procurers, and since 2019 we had 22.7 billion of Czech crowns. On the next slide you can see the organizations we work for. We have 115 organizations, schools, then hospitals, regional hospitals, social institutions, cultural institutions. We support all of these organizations. We are being established by the Pilsen region and we work free of charge for all the already mentioned organizations since 2009. This is what we have saved, how many contracts we signed. But the question is the impact on the planet, on the quality. Nevertheless, the saved financial means that's something which has to be proved and reported why we are an independent organization. How many regions do we have in Czech Republic? Do you happen to know? You probably, most of you remember that it's 13 regions plus Prague. It seems you're still sleepy after lunch. So independent organization for central purchasing is established only in Pilsen region. Why to have a central procurer as an independent organization? We can generate financial savings, we have unified prices, we can guarantee the prices for a longer period of time, and we have advantageous prices because we can procure huge volumes. The time saving is because you can find all of the products in one location. We have unified contractual relationships. You can order the whole range of products in one e-shop. E-shop has been launched in 2014. It's fully automated, and right now we had a public procurement where we were evaluating 50% was price and 50% interview. We also have a centralized know-how. We know which products to procure, which do pay off and which not. We have unified samples of framework agreements, etc. It was not the case when I joined the organization. We were gradually changing the way of work. Every single member of our team knows what his role, his task is, what are the positives. It's the speed. We are impartial, fair, and prior to the elections, our procurers still need functional procurement. We are not influenced by any political turmoil because we are independent organization. What you can do to establish such organization in other region or at national level? First of all, you have to define a strategy plan. You have to have analysis of how many people working on the procurements, how much might cost you an administration in the central purchasing in the region Pilsen. We have 16 people working. For the city, we have for the municipality of Pilsen, it's 5 to 10 people. You have to find out how many procurements you have, how much time you need, how many people should be working on it. You know, I would say majority of the municipalities are procuring the same type of product. So if you have all the analysis available, you submit it to your management. First of all, you have to, of course, get in touch with them, and then you try to persuade actually the politicians about the benefits of central procurement power, and then you can establish such organization. We are independent organization, but it can be opened as a limited liability company. You must, of course, be able to recruit people willing to learn. Then you have to define procedures, methodologies, strategies, and then for all those you are going to work, you have to clearly define a particular region, for example, a region, so you inform all the organizations within the region that you are available. Of course, you need to have sort of contract management, and that has to be improved in the Czech Republic. You really have to monitor whether it's functional within your organization, whether it's functional for your purchases. The central purchasing body, central procurer, is already established in Pilsen. We do evaluation, monitoring. We try to improve the whole system, make it more professional. What we do, we have centralized procurement, we do administer all public tenders, we define open debates, control, monitor if everything is in compliance with the legislation. We don't use any templates. We also have, we offer methodology and consultancy. We can support any procurement in the Czech Republic. We do support municipalities. We are sort of a supportive methodology company. Is such support available somewhere in the Czech Republic? That's what we do and what I think can be significantly improved in the Czech Republic. We also publish our reports. Partly it's PR, partly it's a proof that we are real experts in the given field. And I have a brief exercise for you right now. Please do close your eyes. All of you, close your eyes. In the Czech Republic, there are 13 regions and the capital city of Prague. Just try to imagine the map of Czech Republic. The Pilsen region is located in western part, and this particular region is clearly visible on the map because they have a centralized purchasing power. In other regions, there is something similar available, but I think it can be improved. Now, open your eyes. You know, I am convinced that centralized buyer makes sense, and we can do a lot to improve the situation.
And last presentation from private sector, Asahi Group, brewing industry. Mr. Leoš Vrzelík, a short introduction. He is an expert in the management of sustainability in private sector. He was a member of the board of the Czech Company for Sustainability, and now he works for Asahi Europe and International, where he is in charge of the implementation of principles of sustainability in central purchasing. He focuses mainly on packaging management, carbon footprints, and supplies of raw materials or ingredients for production. The floor is yours. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by saying that it will be difficult to add some new information because we have already heard quite a lot, but I will try to bring the perspective of the private sector and speak about inspirational things and to follow on the previous presenters said and to look at different areas from the different perspective. Just briefly, the company I represent is called Asahi Europe and International. To describe the company, I'd like to say that we are 19 brewing companies in 90 countries. We brew beer in Europe. We export to 90 countries where we have 10,000 people, and we produce beer in 8 countries, and we actually produce 40 million hectoliters, which is about half liter per every inhabitant of this planet. We have about 120 people in central purchasing. We are based in Prague, but it includes about 30 nationalities. Most of them are based in Prague, but also they are also in other 7 countries where we operate, and we cover about 98% of all purchases of Asahi Europe and International. Our turnover is about 10 billion euros that get through the purchasing department. I think this picture says everything what we produce, and it creates a nice atmosphere because you always look forward to drink one of our products. So you probably know these Czech brands. I don't have to introduce them. So when speaking about central purchasing, what is inspirational about it and what we focus on is the following. I have chosen several areas I'd like to cover. The first one is strategy. We have already heard a lot about strategies, and I believe that every institution, not only a company, should have their own strategy, and if not strategy, at least objectives and vision. I think actually most companies have that, but they are presented in various ways, and we need to say that meeting the strategy is very important, and the purchasing plays the key role in that. In companies, people often say that it is the manufacturing that plays the key role, but I would say that purchasing department plays the key role. Why? I can say, based on my experience, that you are not able to achieve strategic goals without the involvement of your suppliers. Of course, there can be the involvement can vary, but after all, then you are not able to achieve such goals. I speak based on my sustainability experience because we also set goals in carbon neutrality, not only in our manufacturing plants where we will achieve that within 8 years, but also for the supply chain, and you cannot do it without them. So the role of suppliers is really key, as well as is the role of purchasing department, because it provides the feedback to the people who create the strategies about what is happening on the market. Because you can have great strategies, but if the market is not prepared for your strategies, for example, suppliers that provide you with ingredients for beer brewing, then you are not able to achieve your goals. So strategy is extremely important. This is the picture you can find on the website of part3, which actually says quite clearly that part3 is one of our biggest breweries. So on that website you find 7 sustainability goals, and I focus on 3 that are closely related to purchasing department. So they are not only guided by the strategy and sales, but in our company they are guided by purchasing department. I should also mention the economies of scale, which are extremely important when you purchase in high volumes. Also like to emphasize that purchasing is actually a trade, one that has two sides, where you buy and sell. So it is extremely important to have a strong negotiating position as well. So the purchasing is business, and if you have a stronger negotiating position, it means that you are an important entity. We are a big company, and speaking about packaging, we buy about billions of packaging units a year. But of course, the beverage market is huge, and brewers are not the leaders. The leaders are those who sell used lemonades and similar beverages. So we play a key role, as I said, so therefore we can define what we want to purchase. So the more key our role is, the more specific we can be. We can focus on sustainability, we can put pressure on our suppliers to do things they haven't done yet so far, and with pride I can say that in the field of sustainability we are one of the leaders, because we come up with many things as the first one, and then we need to have the position in order to be able to promote it. Now, information, data are extremely important. We have 120 people in purchasing, including 10 who work only with data, support other people with data, process information, not only information from tenders, information on suppliers, but also information about the market that help to make really informed and relevant decisions. So if many people say that if we centralize purchasing, then there will be only one person who will be overloaded. But it doesn't mean that will be only one person. As I said, we have quite a lot of people in central purchasing department, and I have to say that information is key. And one thing is to have the information, and also the other thing is to have information in the right place. In the past, working for other companies, I experienced that had centralized purchasing, and people said that it's actually decentralized centralization. So it didn't work well, and we don't want to have that. You need to be clear on what you want, and the flow of information must be clear and must be centralized and easily accessible, otherwise it will not work. Here is one nice example about the data. A few years ago we measured our carbon footprints, and also that of our breweries, and also that of our supply chain. I said that in 2050 we will ensure carbon neutrality. We also set the goals and made our people familiar with our employees. We are quite a dynamic organization with many young people and dynamic people. So people are not afraid of changes, and they are quite creative and came up with a lot of ideas. So when we introduced our plan about carbon neutrality, we got a great feedback and a lot of ideas, especially about introducing electric vehicle. For several years I have used the electric vehicle already, so I'm used to that. But when we calculated the carbon footprint, we realized that all business travel of our employees, not only cars but also planes, accounts for 0.4% of the carbon footprint. So this is another thing that is related with the data. It is very important to focus on key issues. And when you have the information, you can do that. Sometimes we tend to, and not only the big company, maybe also public administration, have the tendency to try to cover everything. There are quite a lot of topics we would like to cover, but this is meaningless. We actually have a category that is called Let It Go, or let it be. So we only identified categories we want to focus on, and the whole strategy of purchasing and the topics we include in the tenders are 2 or 3 basic topics that have the biggest impact on sustainability of our company. And the 2 basics are carbon footprint and circularity, which you can see in this graph.
Dokonce asi 6krát větší, než je celková stopa všech pivovarů. Takže je zajímavé, že to pivo samotné vaření toho piva, celá ta výroba, tak není tak uhlíkově energeticky
production is not that carbon demanding as the actual life cycle of packaging or cooling of beers or cooling of beer, tap beer. The energy consumed for that is several times higher than the energy you need for actually brewing the beer. Another thing which is connected to data and to organizational structure is the processes, description of processes, systemization of the whole organization that has also been mentioned. What I consider of importance is the fact that centralization doesn't mean that you have someone who knows all somewhere in the headquarters and he does everything. He or she does everything. The centralization of procurement is the system which describes clearly how the processes should work, and a group of people who follows these processes. If I'm talking about the central purchasing, you know, we have people in 8 countries in very different locations in charge of a whole range of things. We even have local people we have had for Czech central purchasing. He has a team of 5 people and he procures whatever is better procured in the Czech Republic. And then we have the very centralized procurement, which is in charge of all the individual countries. There are some products which makes more sense to purchase locally, and other products which can be procured for globally. 2 years ago, we have signed a contract to purchase green energy in Poland. All our Polish breweries are producing and using energy from renewable sources. In particular, it's wind. We have wind mills which are supplying basically the energy to our breweries. When it was for the first time when we were drafting a contract for such important issue in such a large scale. Even it's a global company, it was brand new for many of us. The team of the people, this is the person responsible for central purchasing of energy. He's from India, located in Netherlands. We had members of the team from Prague and energy professionals from the Polish breweries and the financial director of the Polish business. So we had a very specific team, clearly defined competencies, clearly defined procedure of approval. It's a contract for the period of 10 years with the current prices of energy, thanks to God, because these are marvelous, unique prices. When we have carried out research among the Polish consumers that the beer be brewed based on the wind energy, 90% of the respondents were very happy because they were convinced that as such energy is free of charge, then the beer will be slightly cheaper. So that's a different perception. Nevertheless, this was quite unique within the process management. You can set up a highly specialized team which can actually conclude such a unique agreement. These are purchase processes. Majority of you has it probably defined as well. It looks complicated, but it's not. Of course, under each bullet you can find a description of competencies, responsibilities, etc. What I have forgotten to mention, the people are coming and leaving. It's common in every business. The company has to be prepared for it by having the system in place. So in case of onboarding, recruiting new person, such a person has to clearly from the very beginning know what she is responsible for. And these systems, these processes do support it. This looks quite demanding from the administrative point of view. You know, many of the administrative companies or representatives keep telling us, well, it's quite easy for you because you are not bound by legislation, standards, etc. But it's not true, because we have to, of course, comply with all these standards, and we do draft our own standards and requirements. We don't have process maps of processes, not only our own, but this is a life cycle of a can. We are not producing the cans, but we are using the cans for canned beer. So that's one of the things which we should be quite aware of. We need to know the life cycle of a product we're using. It's one of the largest carbon footprints in the whole of our portfolio. So from the very beginning of the production till the disposal of the can, we have a manager who should be quite aware of the whole process. He should know all the set of the companies, different set of people who can influence the product you're purchasing. And sustainability, I think it has been mentioned. You will definitely discuss it tomorrow. Even though I've been working in this field for a long period of time, and I love this topic, I will not focus on the individual topics of innovations and sustainability, but as an illustration, we are trying to systemize in this sphere of activity. We do define segments of our suppliers. We can do large scale, small scale, but we also, if we focus on sustainability, we try to define categories of the suppliers according to sustainability, zero carbon footprint. Then, of course, we have to know about our suppliers, what their goals are concerning the carbon footprint, what are their strategies, how they approach it, how they can impact on our business, what is our impact on their business. We do set up matrices, and we really try to focus only on where we can change, make a change, and postpone further the procurement. That's all on my behalf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veselý. And now I would like to ask the questions from the audience first. Now I'd like to ask whether you have any questions to our speakers. If you have a question, please put up your hand and use the mic. Say your name and the name of the speaker to whom you will speak and whether it will be in English or in Czech. Martin Hadáš, Masaryk University. I'd like to ask both speakers
I would like to ask
from abroad now in English.
Such complex organizations like yours. And the second thing is you mentioned that you provide services especially for municipalities. Do you provide services for public universities in your countries as well?
May I start? Yes, I didn't mention it before. We are in close contact with the universities in Austria. The universities already built up an association of sustainable universities. And we have also applied universities. They're a little bit different in the organizational type, and they built up an association too. So we see a huge effort in the university field to bring more sustainability criteria in their public procurement tenders, and we are in very close partnership with these alliances. This is really helpful to have these alliances. So, because in another way you have to talk with a lot of universities, and this is a question of time. But if you have one contact person, if you have one network with one contact person, you can better work together. And we already built up a manual designed especially for the universities for GPP and SRPP. This was our first step, and we are searching for the next events and workshops. And yeah, we have a really good cooperation. And from some words to the municipalities. We have the service center. If you are still here tomorrow, you will get more insights about the NABE platform and about the services. It's very important to us to bring our practical insights to the practitioners, and we have some formats like webinars or like workshops, and we are in good contacts. Especially we start now with the cities. I was last week in the city of Linz. I think you know this city in upper Austria, and what we are trying is to find so-called strategical partnerships. But we want to start with larger cities, with the capital cities in the federal states, to bind them to the NABE action plan. And what I didn't mention before too is that we find already two federal states, the Bundesländer, two federal states, they have already agreed to the NABE action plan per federal state decision. So you see, we are coming further. Yeah, and we want to harmonize our action plan with all levels and with all public enterprises in the public hand.
Yes, in Sweden, the universities are on the federal level. So in Sweden, we have a CPB working for the federal level, so they take care of all the federal authorities. We also have a procurement authority in Sweden who is having a support function for all public procurement in Sweden. They do a lot of guidelines, they develop criteria for sustainability and other issues as well. So we have that kind of setup in Sweden, where we have the procurement authority and we have the CPB for the governmental or federal level.
And maybe one more word to the universities, if I may.
Yeah,
the universities in Austria are really autonomous, and they are not binded to the NABE action plan by the law or by these Intel instructions. So they are aligned to the Ministry of Education, but they are autonomous, and they are not have to be mandatory with this NABE action plan. But we see some of these universities make this step forward, and especially this alliance help us to reach all of these universities to agree to this NABE action plan. But we have to convince them.
Jestli někdo další, kdo by se chtěl...
Já rovnou využiju toho, že mám mikrofon.
So I'd like to use the fact that I have a microphone. Martin Jarman, Czech TV. I have a question to the colleague from Asahi. I really like the presentation, and I can see that you have quite a lot of data. And as an enthusiastic consumer, I'd like to ask from the sustainable perspective, if I want to drink a beer, should I buy it in a bottle, in can, or go to a pub? I'd like to know this. And then, are there any planned changes for the future? Maybe the legislation will change, or the behavior of consumers will change in the future, where the order will change. Okay, thank you very much. Clearly, you should go to pub if I consider carbon footprints. Regarding packaging, there are several principles. The first one is that the size matters. So the bigger the packaging, the worse. The smaller the packaging, the worst. And so another principle is the possibility to reuse it. So please do not use the plastic. This is not good for beer, but I would like to recommend you, if you buy beer in supermarkets, buy it in returnable bottles. Then the carbon footprint is smaller. Regarding the future, we are returning to recyclability and returnability. So we try to introduce the take back and refill system. Of course, it cannot be used for cans or plastic, but it is possible to buy a deposit for can or plastic, which are then recycled. So there is a clear trend that if we use a single-use packaging, they should have the highest content of recyclability and the least content of virgin material. Other questions?
Hello. So, Livia, Public Procurement Office, Lithuania. I have a question for Peter. I want to ask about the follow-up. You mentioned that it's very important to follow up the contracts and contract management, but as a central purchasing body, could you clarify how do you actually do it in practice? Is it the central purchasing body that does the follow-up for every contract, for example, coming from DPS, or is it the buyer? Because I think that it's very important in sustainable public procurement to have contract management, but in how it works in practice is, I think, a very difficult question.
Thank you. No, it's a good question. And we follow up the framework agreement criteria, not the contract criteria that our contracting authority are using, because that would be a lot of work for us. Maybe in the future we have to do that as well as a help, but then we need more people in our CPB. But we do follow up all the contract clauses that are in the framework agreement, but also the criteria in the procurement, in the framework agreement procurement. And those we follow up through different methods that I showed you in my slides.
Okay, so understand that for framework agreements and every public buyer, then it's all on them to, if they want to follow up their own contracts with the supplier.
They need to have own resources to do that, yes. But if we see, if they report to us that there are a lot of discrepancies, one supplier doesn't deliver in the way he or she should, then we will bring it up with the supplier, of course, if we can see a systematic flaw or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, if there is any reaction from the other speakers, of course you can have the reaction. Zeptám se publika ještě na nějaké dotazy. Tady vidím.
Do you have any further questions? Do we have any further questions from the audience?
Marek Zelenka, oživení.
Marek Zelenka, I will follow up Martin Hadaš, because his first question was how long did it take in Austria and Sweden? And I will actually expand it by Pilsen region. How long did it take you to define the strategy so the buyers, the procurers would contact you, or is it obligatory for them to procure through centralized procurement? Well, centralized procurement is available since 2009. We didn't know how to grasp it because in public administration we had no experience with anything like that. We were actually inspired by Agrofert as centralized procurement. The centralized commodities products were actually pressed a little bit. We do primarily administer, to be able to define strategies. It took us at least 2 years to have procedures, processes, unified approach. We have to be easily readable, easily understandable, comprehensible for the individual suppliers. To follow up the question.
Do you have some recommendation how to prevent closing market for small entities, for small and medium-sized entities? Is there any way? What would you recommend, Mr. Weiner, Mr. Norstedt?
Recommendations for small, and it's all about the tenderships and which structures the public authorities use. We discussed before in a smaller round. There is this new availability of the dynamic purchasing system. That could be really helpful for SMEs to come into this public procurement system, especially if we look at the framework agreements. The framework agreements, if I see it here in Austria, they are a very large-scaled tenders with millions of volume in it, and they're specialized for wholesalers or for large companies to apply in. And especially the dynamic purchasing system through its openness during the contract time and through the possibilities to define very small mini tenders. So this could be really attractive for SMEs. But the DPS is a full electronic system. And digitalization is for SMEs, not for all, many of them are very fit in these systems, but for some of them, especially in some branches, like also the food sector, I have to say, they have challenges, and it starts with the digital signature. It's a topic. But this is not a thing that we can solve alone. I mentioned before the chambers. The chambers of commerce has to help their members. They have to engage the members. They have to skill their members to be fit for the new millennium.
Thank you. Já jenom vidím paní Dubcová, Mrs. Dubcová.
Tak já myslím, že to je hlavně o té znalosti trhu.
I think it's primarily about the knowledge of the market. You have to carry out the preliminary market consultancy, and it's also a question of culture, because whatever is functional in Austria or Sweden does not necessarily have to be functional in the Czech Republic. We do have a different cultural background.
Yeah, I think early engagement and early dialogue dialogue with the market before procurement is really key here. So you have to be out there, talk to the suppliers on the market and inform them, and maybe also train them in if you want to have a new strategy or do something sustainable, you need to be out there early, maybe years ahead. Then you can always split up your framework agreement in smaller lots, in geographical lots, in order to get them to tender on smaller parts. But I also think the DPS is really important here, and we see some good effects from using DPS. It's more dynamic and it's more flexible. So DPS and more digital DPS system in the future would make it more available for SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Já se ještě tedy nyní naposledy zeptám publika, zda má někdo nějaký dotaz.
I'd like to ask the audience whether there are still some questions.
A v případě tedy...
If it is not the case...
Pardon, tak poprosím Adama. Děkuji.
Oh, Adam. Okay.
And maybe a last question I will ask in English because I suppose all the speakers are available of understanding it. Peter actually mentioned that it is very crucial that the centralized purchasing body proves the capacity, proves the quality of services. That's basically the main, let's say, feature or main starting point for persuading the contracting authorities to use the centralized system. But do the other speakers have some recipes, some tips, how to make the contracting authorities be more attracted to using centralized purchasing systems? How would you, let's say in 3 words or 3 sentences, recommend the centralized purchasing authorities to persuade the individual contracting authorities, especially if we want not only 1 or 2 regions in the Czech Republic having this, but also more and more institutions in the Czech Republic. And the question might be a bit tricky for Mr. Vrzarík, because I do understand that your position is quite different, but what is basic? Are there any basic notions that you can share that how to establish a working, effective, centralized purchasing within organization that might be, let's say, modification for you, and that will be my question.
So I guess you mean the question.
The question is aimed primarily because Peter actually set his point to Gerhard and to Mrs. Dubcová.
Yeah. One huge advantage for to use centralized purchasing bodies is, of course, to save resources. Because in this centralized purchasing bodies, I look at the PPG, there is already these capabilities, as well as I explained it before. You see inside the PPG the service centers for innovation, for sustainability, so you can use these sources for your own good, and you spare the resources for other projects and for other missions you have to solve too, because procurement is only a function to reach your goals, and it's not the kernel of your enterprise. But it's really important, don't get me wrong.
Já si odpovím česky nebo anglicky.
We'll probably answer in Czech, so you don't have to put on headset. And it is very simple in business because you persuade with your results. So I know that it's necessary to make the first step, but when I was at birth of the central purchasing, they were usually established by picking a few categories and testing it in these 4 categories, and if it worked well, he started to expand it. So recommendation for those you would like to start with on small, and also in the areas where you can see the benefits of central purchasing. Of course, the state administration works differently a bit in certain aspects, but I think even there you can persuade with positive results. At this moment, Due to time pressure, I will have to close this panel. Thank you very much, all the speakers, for inspiring presentations and your answers to the questions. And we look forward to meeting you again at the next conference. Thank you very much for that.